Has your dog ever done something that completely stopped you in your tracks? Maybe it felt like they knew what you were thinking, or even predicted something before it happened. If you're nodding yes, let me tell you, it's probably not just a coincidence. What you're seeing might actually be part of a prophecy made over 80 years ago by a man who claimed he could see the future while he slept. His name was Edgar Cayce, often called the Sleeping Prophet. Between 1919 and 1944, he gave over 14,000 documented predictions during deep trance-like states. And get this, many of those predictions came true with stunning accuracy. He foresaw the Great Depression. He predicted both world wars. He even talked about the internet, decades before it was ever invented. But there's one particular prophecy from Cayce that stayed buried in obscurity for a long time. A prophecy about dogs, and what he described is unfolding right now, maybe even in your own living room. See, Cayce didn't just predict world events. He also saw visions of how animals, especially dogs, would evolve spiritually alongside humans. In one of his 1943 trance sessions, he said something that still gives chills to those who read it. The four-legged guardians will awaken when the earth enters its new vibration. He wasn't talking about dogs being cute or cuddly. Cayce described them as spiritual bridges between worlds, sent here to teach humans about unconditional love, healing, and deeper forms of connection. He believed dogs were natural spiritual antennas, able to feel energy shifts, predict events, and even help heal people emotionally and physically, just by being near them. And he didn't leave this prophecy vague. He was specific about when all of this would start happening. According to Cayce, this canine transformation would begin during a time of global upheaval, a time when the world would face major challenges, pandemics, climate shifts, rapid technological change, and a collective spiritual awakening. Sound familiar? He even broke it down into 3 distinct waves of canine evolution. Wave 1, dogs developing the ability to detect illness and sense future events. Wave 2, dogs establishing telepathic communication with their humans. Yes, actual mind-to-mind connection. Wave 3, dogs becoming energetic healers, able to clear out negative energy and help with deep emotional wounds. In another trance from 1944, Cayce said, "When the talking machines connect all humans, which sounds eerily like the internet, the dogs will awaken to their true spiritual purpose. They wouldn't just be pets anymore. They'd be partners in our consciousness evolution." But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Cayce claimed that many of the dogs born during this global awakening phase wouldn't be ordinary animals at all. He described them as advanced souls, beings of light, who chose to incarnate as dogs to help humans through this transition. Think about that for a second. Your family pet might actually be an evolved soul in disguise. And according to Cayce, this isn't some distant future. It's happening now. The signs are everywhere. Dogs detecting cancer before doctors, comforting their owners at exactly the right moment, acting strangely before natural disasters or family arguments, forming what feels like psychic connections with people. And not just a few cases, this is a global phenomenon. It's becoming clearer that our dogs aren't just reacting to the world. They're part of something much bigger. They're here to help us heal, evolve, and reconnect to a kind of wisdom we've lost over time. So let me ask you, are you open to the possibility that your dog might be so much more than you've ever imagined? Because once you hear the full story of what Cayce saw and the waves of awakening he predicted, you'll never look at your dog, or any dog, the same way again. Let's go back to that 1944 trance session. It was one of Cayce's last, and according to those who were there, it left the entire room in stunned silence. With his voice altered by the trance, Cayce began to describe images of a future where dogs would play a central role in human spiritual life. "I see the four-legged guardians awakening," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "When Earth enters its new vibration, they will become conscious bridges between the worlds." He went on to explain that dogs would start appearing in families, not just as companions, but as masters in disguise. They would teach humans how to love unconditionally, how to sense and shift energy, how to reconnect with a deeper, more intuitive part of ourselves. And it wouldn't be limited to any one type of dog. Cayce was very clear. Both purebred and mixed-breed dogs would show these signs. But he said rescue and adopted dogs would often carry the strongest spiritual purpose. Why? Because the act of being saved, being chosen, would activate something in them. It was like a spiritual contract being fulfilled. Then he dropped a revelation that floored everyone in the room. Cayce said that many of the dogs born during this era were actually reincarnated souls, beings who chose to come back as dogs, specifically to help guide humans through a time of global transformation. And he didn't sugarcoat it. He warned that not everyone would see what was really happening, that many people would dismiss these canine behaviors as cute quirks or coincidence. But for those who were spiritually awake, the bond between human and dog would deepen into something extraordinary. Still skeptical? You're not alone. Back in 1944, this sounded absolutely crazy to people. At the time, dogs were mostly seen as workers, protectors, or hunters, not spiritual guides. Science couldn't wrap its head around the idea of dogs having energy-healing abilities, much less souls on a mission. But Cayce's timeline was clear. He said this canine evolution would start becoming obvious when humanity began facing global disruptions, massive social and environmental shifts, new diseases, a surge in spiritual exploration, and a new digital web connecting all of us. We are right there, right now. And if you've noticed your own dog behaving differently, more intuitive, more aware, more in tune with your emotions, it might not be in your imagination. You could be witnessing the early waves of what Cayce saw so long ago, because this is just the beginning. Now that we've laid the foundation of Edgar Cayce's prophecy, let's dive into the real-world proof. Because what sounded like mystical predictions in the 1940s is now showing up, loud and clear, in homes, clinics, shelters, and research labs across the globe. If you've got a dog at home, you've probably seen signs yourself. Maybe they've started following you more closely, or they seem to know when something's wrong before you've even said a word. Maybe they act strangely before you get home from work, as if they can feel your return. These aren't random behaviors. They match exactly what Cayce described as the first wave of the canine awakening. Veterinarians and animal behaviorists started noticing something unusual in the early 2000s. Dogs who had always been calm or predictable began showing sudden spikes in emotional sensitivity. And not just with their owners, but in detecting changes in the emotional atmosphere of an entire room. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, a respected behavioral vet, documented over 300 cases of what he called emotional hypersensitivity in dogs. These animals could pick up on their owner's emotional state even before the person consciously realized something was wrong. One of the most striking cases involved a woman named Elizabeth Santos from New Jersey. Her dog, Bobby, a 6-year-old golden retriever, started acting out whenever she prepared to leave for work. He'd cry, block the door, and refuse to budge. At first, she thought he was being clingy or stubborn, until she noticed a pattern. Bobby only behaved this way on days when Elizabeth was severely stressed, days that often led to conflict or crisis at work. Eventually, she realized he wasn't stopping her out of neediness. He was protecting her. "It was like he knew I needed to stay home and take care of myself," she said. "And every time I listened to him, something happened that made me grateful I stayed. That's when I stopped thinking of Bobby as a pet and started seeing him as a guide." And stories like Elizabeth's aren't rare anymore. At Duke University, researchers began collecting reports of dogs detecting illnesses with stunning accuracy. Not just cancers, which we've known dogs could detect, but even conditions like epilepsy, diabetes, and depression. One case involved a Labrador named Luna. Her owner, Zhao, started noticing that Luna would obsessively sniff his left arm for weeks, same spot, over and over. She even started barking at it, something she had never done before. Zhao finally got it checked, and the doctor found a tumor just beneath the skin, right where Luna had been focusing. Coincidence or prophecy? Meanwhile, animal shelters across the country started observing another phenomenon. Dogs that had long been overlooked, older, shy, or previously mistreated, began forming powerful connections with very specific visitors. It was like they were doing the choosing. Anna Claudia Ferrer, a shelter coordinator, explained it like this: "We saw dogs going straight to certain people who were grieving, sick, or emotionally fragile. These weren't random connections. It was like the dogs had a radar for pain and a mission to heal it." Now combine that with the next major clue, the explosion in the number of certified therapy dogs. From 2010 to 2020, the global population of emotional support dogs grew by over 400%. But here's what stunned experts. Many of these dogs displayed natural healing behaviors before they ever received formal training. Hospitals started noticing. Nurses began reporting that dogs would walk past certain rooms and go directly to patients who were on the edge, emotionally or physically. These dogs would ignore rooms where patients were recovering smoothly and focus on those in crisis. They became unofficial tools for triage, pointing out who needed the most attention, without ever saying a word. In one case, a dog named Rosie visited a hospital as part of a therapy program. Every time she came in, she would stop outside one particular room, tail down, and refuse to enter. It turned out the patient inside was suffering from intense emotional trauma after a recent accident. Rosie's behavior didn't make sense until it made perfect sense. Then came something even more extraordinary. Dogs began reacting to natural disasters before they happened. We've known for years that animals can detect things like earthquakes, but the timing has changed. In the past, dogs might grow anxious a few hours before a quake. Now, some are showing signs up to 2 days in advance. And this isn't limited to certain breeds, sizes, or even locations. From huskies in snowy mountain towns to mutts living on urban streets, dogs everywhere are waking up to abilities that science can't quite explain. Their behaviors are becoming more precise, more powerful, and more universally reported. It's clear, Cayce's first wave is no longer just beginning, it's fully here. But what's coming next is even more astonishing. Imagine coming home from a stressful day and, the moment your dog lays next to you, you feel lighter. Your anxiety eases. The heaviness in your chest fades away. You breathe easier. You feel better. This isn't your imagination. This is Wave 2, dogs functioning as energetic healers. Biologist and paranormal researcher, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, spent over a decade studying these phenomena. His conclusion? Dogs are evolving. Not just physically or emotionally, but energetically. In hundreds of documented cases, dogs have shown an uncanny ability to detect and clear negative energy from people and places. Homes, hospitals, trauma centers, even public spaces. Take the Thompson family in England, for example. After moving into an old home, they started experiencing strange disturbances, nightmares, tension, insomnia. But their dog, Max, a large German shepherd, began performing what the family called midnight patrols. Every night, he'd quietly walk through the house, stopping at specific corners. He'd stand still, breathe deeply, then move on. Sometimes he'd whine. Other times he'd shake himself as if casting something off. After a few weeks, the entire family started sleeping better. The anxiety vanished. And when they brought in an energy specialist to check the space, guess what? Every single spot Max had targeted was identified as a location with high residual negative energy. Max wasn't just sensing the vibes. He was clearing them. So if your dog has ever walked around your house after a fight or sat in a corner for hours for no apparent reason, don't dismiss it. They might be doing invisible work for your benefit. This ability, this second wave, is unfolding fast, but it's still only the beginning. So we've seen how dogs are displaying emotional sensitivity and even detecting illnesses before medical technology can. But now, let's explore the second wave of Edgar Cayce's prophecy in more detail, the one that moves beyond sensing and into healing. We're talking about dogs as emotional alchemists, able to transform heavy, dark, negative energy into something lighter, calmer, and healing. And again, these aren't just isolated feel-good stories. These are patterns being observed all around the world. Let's return to the story of Max, the German shepherd in England. Every night, Max patrolled his family's home, stopping at spots no one else paid much attention to. He would stand in place, whine quietly, take deep breaths, and sometimes shake his whole body, like he was shaking something off. It wasn't random behavior. An energy practitioner later confirmed that those exact spots had residual trauma and stagnant energy. Max, the family realized, had been purifying their home without being taught a thing. Now that sounds like something out of a movie, right? But stories like Max's are becoming more and more common. Hospitals and clinics have reported similar behavior from therapy dogs. Nurses in emotional trauma units describe dogs that refuse to enter rooms until something shifts, like the room's energy is too heavy. But when they do enter, patients often experience a sudden emotional release. Tears, relief, smiles, even physical improvements. It's like the presence of the dog gives their body and spirit permission to heal. In Brazil, a Reiki therapist named Esther has worked with her dog, Isis, for over 3 years. Isis isn't trained in any official way, yet she's become a partner in Esther's healing sessions. Every time a client lays down for energy work, Isis lies at their feet. When Esther begins releasing emotional blocks or uncovering deep trauma, Isis often starts trembling. She doesn't bark or cry. She simply vibrates, processing the energy. Then she'll walk away, drink water, shake her body, and return, calm, balanced, and ready for the next session. She's never been taught this, says Esther, but she knows exactly when something heavy. It's like she takes it in, transforms it, and resets herself. Let's pause and consider that. What we're talking about here is emotional transmutation, dogs absorbing negative energy, helping humans process pain, and then discharging that energy safely. That's not just animal instinct. That's intentional spiritual work. And this ability doesn't seem to depend on breed, age, or training. In fact, some of the most powerful examples come from dogs with no formal background in therapy work. Like Amando, a mixed-breed rescue adopted by a man named Ferdinand. Amando's unique gift: he places his paw gently on people who are stressed, angry, or grieving. And people feel it, instantly. They describe an emotional melting, a sudden wave of calm, or even a sense of being deeply seen. "He just knows," says Ferdinand. "He chooses the right person, the right moment." And after a few minutes of that paw on your arm or leg, you feel like a weight has lifted. Now multiply that story by thousands. It's not an exaggeration. Online communities, pet owner forums, even scientific studies are filled with these accounts. What makes this even more fascinating is that dogs don't just heal people, they heal spaces too. Homes that have been through heavy emotional trauma, divorce, loss, abuse, often report that their dogs begin pacing certain rooms. They'll stop in corners where fights took place. They'll sit in areas where sadness lingered. They'll lay down for long stretches of time, as if drawing the darkness into themselves to transform it. These dogs aren't just offering comfort. They're acting as energetic filters, taking in, cleansing, and radiating harmony back into the space. And then there's the phenomenon of healing touch. We've all felt comforted by a dog's presence. But what about when that touch goes deeper? When someone's anxiety, grief, or even physical pain gets significantly better just from being touched by a dog? In spiritual terms, this is known as conscious energy transfer, and it's now being observed in real-world settings. Studies in energetic healing clinics are beginning to show measurable changes in patients' vital signs when touched by certain dogs. Lower heart rate, stabilized breathing, reduced blood pressure. But the patients don't just report feeling calmer, they describe it as feeling whole again. So what's actually happening here? Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, who we mentioned earlier, believes dogs are accessing what he calls a morphic resonance field, a kind of invisible energy grid that connects all life. When a dog interacts with a human, especially someone in distress, they're not just offering affection. They're tuning into that person's energy field and offering a kind of vibrational reset. This is why so many people report feeling like their dog knows them better than anyone. They're not imagining it. Their dog is literally tuning in to their emotional frequency. And here's where it gets even deeper. In many cases, these behaviors begin suddenly, often after a traumatic event or major life change. It's as if something activates in the dog. A switch gets flipped, and suddenly, a dog that never acted particularly special before starts displaying stunning emotional intelligence and healing behaviors. That exact pattern was seen in one of the most talked about stories of the year. Baya, an 8-month-old mixed breed from Minas Gerais, Brazil. In March 2023, Baya began barking like crazy in the middle of the night. She scratched at her owner's bedroom door until they finally got up. But instead of heading toward the front door like most dogs would, Baya ran straight to the baby's room. When the parents opened the door, their 6-month-old daughter was unconscious and turning purple. She was in the middle of a severe apnea episode, one that, according to doctors, would have been fatal if not caught in time. What's shocking is that Baya had never shown signs of this kind of instinct or protectiveness before. But at the moment she was needed most, she awakened to her role as a guardian. It was like her mission activated. This is what Edgar Cayce meant when he said, "The four-legged guardians will awaken, and they will act when the moment of need arises." And it's happening not just with babies or family members, but with strangers too. Dogs running to alert neighbors about fires. Pets waking people just moments before gas leaks. Dogs saving children from traffic or preventing strangers from entering homes. These aren't just animal instincts. These are conscious interventions. Dr. James Serpell at the University of Pennsylvania has collected over 1,000. His conclusion? These dogs aren't just reacting. They're knowing things. They're acting on information they shouldn't have. That brings us right to the edge of the third wave of Cayce's prophecy. The wave where dogs don't just feel or heal, but know. Where they become active, conscious collaborators in guiding and protecting their humans from harm. Where they act on unseen knowledge and show up as true guardians of the people they love. And this is just the beginning. The third wave of Edgar Cayce's canine prophecy isn't just about dogs having special sensitivities or emotional healing powers. It's about knowledge, awareness, action. This is the wave where dogs awaken to their full role as guardians of humanity, and it's unfolding right now in ways the world can't ignore. Let's revisit the story of Baya, the puppy who saved a baby from suffocating in the middle of the night. Her behavior didn't fit a pattern. She wasn't a trained service animal. She had never shown signs of protective instinct before. And yet, in the moment it mattered most, she acted with supernatural urgency. This is the essence of the third wave, knowing something that can't be explained by sight, sound, or scent. Every week, social media lights up with stories that match this pattern. Dogs appearing out of nowhere to prevent accidents, waking families seconds before a fire starts, pulling their owners away from a danger no one else could have seen. And if you pay close attention, the timing of these actions is almost always perfect. These aren't random flukes, they're patterns, and people are starting to notice. One of the most dramatic cases happened in October 2023 in a small American suburb. A German shepherd named Thor broke out of his backyard, something he had never done before. He ran 3 blocks to a construction site and began barking frantically at the workers, circling a specific area and refusing to let anyone pass. They laughed at first, but 20 minutes later, the structure in that area collapsed. Had the workers ignored Thor's warning, they would have been crushed. Now ask yourself, how did he know? His owner said it was completely out of character. Thor had never escaped the yard, never run off, and never been to that construction site. It was like he was sent. It sounds unbelievable until you realize there are hundreds of stories just like it. That's why researchers like Dr. James Serpell have been documenting these cases with increasing urgency. He and his team at the University of Pennsylvania's Center for the Interaction of Animals and Society have gathered over 1,200 reports of dogs saving lives, often in situations where no logical explanation exists. What we're seeing, says Dr. Serpell, goes beyond instinct. It's precognitive. These dogs know before anything physically happens. It's like they're plugged into some other source of information. And the most jaw-dropping part? Many of these heroic dogs weren't just saving their own families. They were stepping in to protect total strangers. Like Maxine, a rescue mutt in Florida who jumped into traffic to knock a young boy out of the way of an oncoming vehicle. The boy was crossing the street while distracted, and Maxine, who had never met him, charged from a nearby porch and tackled him seconds before impact. She was unharmed. The boy walked away in shock. His mother called it divine intervention, but Maxine's foster owner knew better. She'd been acting different all morning, he said. Pacing, whining, like she was waiting for something. And then it happened. So what do we do with this information? Are we supposed to believe our pets are psychic warriors walking among us? Maybe that's exactly what Cayce was trying to tell us. Remember his words, they will no longer be just pets. They will be conscious collaborators in the elevation of human consciousness. And if you think this is all just magical thinking, consider what modern science is starting to confirm. Researchers at Duke University and the HeartMath Institute have begun studying the connection between dogs and the human energetic field. Their early findings suggest something incredible. Dogs are not only sensitive to our energy, but they may also synchronize their brainwaves with ours, even at a distance. Let that sink in for a moment. Your dog might literally be tuning into your thoughts. Dr. Michael Chen, a neuroscientist leading a telepathy study at Duke, conducted a series of MRI scans that monitored the brains of dogs and their owners. In many cases, the moment the human had a thought, without speaking or moving, the dog's brain showed activity in response. It's not just emotional mirroring, says Dr. Chen. We're seeing patterns of actual neurological synchronization. Dogs may be operating on a shared frequency with their humans. That would explain why so many people report stories like, "My dog was waiting at the door when I thought about coming home, before I left the office. She woke me up seconds before the phone rang about bad news. He growled at a person I later found out had bad intentions before they said a word." And it doesn't stop at real-time awareness. A growing number of people report shared dreams with their dogs. That's right, dreams. They describe waking up with vivid impressions of their pet, giving them a message, warning them of something, or simply offering comfort during a stressful life period. And when they check in on their dog, the animal is wide awake, watching them closely, sometimes even exhibiting behaviors that match the dream. Coincidence, or communication on a soul level? These moments, once dismissed as wishful thinking or emotional projection, are now being taken seriously by an increasing number of scientists and spiritual researchers. The line between human and animal consciousness is blurring, and dogs are leading the charge. Now imagine this: a world where your dog isn't just your companion, but your spiritual ally, your protector, your healer, your guide. What would that relationship look like if you treated it as a partnership? What if your dog chose you, not the other way around? In fact, many animal communicators and spiritual practitioners believe that dogs with special missions often choose their human families through synchronicity. They arrive during a time of crisis. They appear in your life through a strange coincidence. They bond with you instantly, before you've even made the decision to adopt them. That's not luck. That's alignment. It's also why more and more people are describing their relationship with their dog as something deeper than love, something sacred. So if you've ever had a moment where you looked into your dog's eyes and felt like they understood you more than anyone else, you're not crazy. You're witnessing something ancient, mystical, and incredibly real. Your dog might not just be here to keep you company. They might be here to elevate you, to teach you, to protect you, and to walk beside you through one of the greatest shifts humanity has ever known. We've talked about dogs sensing emotions, healing trauma, predicting danger. But what if I told you the bond goes even deeper? What if dogs and humans aren't just emotionally connected, but quantumly entangled? It might sound like science fiction, but leading researchers are starting to explore a profound idea: that dogs and their humans operate on shared energetic frequencies. In simple terms, your dog isn't just emotionally in sync with you. They're vibrationally linked to you, in real time, beyond space and logic. Let's talk about Dr. Rupert Sheldrake again, the scientist who's dedicated over a decade to studying telepathic communication between animals and humans. His research is eye-opening. Take the story of JT, a small fox terrier who lived with his owner, Pam Smart. Pam worked random hours and commuted in a different way almost every day, sometimes by bus, other times on foot, occasionally with friends. There was no pattern, yet cameras installed in her house showed something extraordinary. JT would consistently walk to the window and wait at the exact moment Pam decided to come home, not when she left work, but when the thought entered her mind. Let's be clear, it wasn't tied to a schedule. It wasn't based on hearing her car. It was a reaction to a thought that occurred miles away. "We tested this over and over," said Sheldrake. The results were too consistent to dismiss. JT responded to Pam's intention, not her actions. Now scale that idea globally. Over 4,000 cases have been documented by Sheldrake and other researchers showing similar results. Dogs who respond to thoughts before they're spoken, dogs who react to their humans' emotional states from across town, and dogs who know when something is happening, without any physical cues. It goes further. Trainers like Sarah Johnson in Los Angeles have started testing what she calls silent commands. In her experiments, dog owners are asked to sit across from their pets and focus on a single command, without speaking, gesturing, or making eye contact. The results: dogs followed the correct command 78% of the time. It's like the dogs are reading the mental image, Sarah explains. They aren't just guessing. They're tapping into what the owner is picturing in their mind. This isn't just cool, it's transformational. Because if dogs can respond to thoughts and even sync with our intentions, it means the relationship between human and dog isn't limited to affection or instinct. It's conscious co-creation. And it's not just anecdotal. Hard science is beginning to catch up. At Duke University, MRI scans and heart monitoring studies have shown that a dog's physiological state mirrors their owner's emotional condition with incredible accuracy. Heart rates sync, breathing patterns align. Even brain waves begin to reflect each other, especially in quiet, non-verbal moments of connection. Think about the last time you sat silently with your dog. No talking, no commands, just presence. You may not have realized it, but your brain and your dog's were likely resonating in harmony. This phenomenon, often called heart coherence, is at the cutting edge of consciousness science. The HeartMath Institute, a research center that studies the energetic connection between living beings, found that when humans enter a state of emotional calm and gratitude, their dog's heart rhythms instantly begin to reflect those same patterns, even when they're in separate rooms. There's something happening here that goes beyond our current understanding of biology, says Dr. Rand McCraty from HeartMath. Dogs are tuning into the electromagnetic fields we generate. They're responding to energetic shifts that are invisible to the naked eye, but deeply real. It's not just happening during peaceful moments. The connection gets louder during emotional turbulence. Soldiers returning from combat report stories of their dogs reacting thousands of miles away during firefights. Families dealing with sudden grief often notice their pets acting distressed hours before the event occurs. One such case is Corporal James Mitchell, a U.S. veteran who served in Iraq. During one of his most dangerous deployments, his dog Princess, who was thousands of miles away back home, would whine, cry, and act inconsolable on the exact days James was under fire. His wife started tracking it. When James returned, they compared dates. "Every time I was in danger," James said, "she knew. She felt it before anyone else, before I even picked up the rifle." Now ask yourself, is that just coincidence? Or is it a sign of something deeper, a level of connection so intimate it defies time and space? Quantum physicists are beginning to explore this idea seriously. Some now believe dogs may be able to tap into what's known as the collective morphogenetic field, a kind of invisible web of energy and information that connects all living things. When two beings share a strong emotional bond, like a dog and their human, that connection may form a direct line of energy. Thoughts, feelings, even intentions can pass along that line, instantly. And what's even more mind-blowing, that connection doesn't fade with distance. It doesn't require training. And it may intensify when the human is going through crisis, transformation, or spiritual growth. That's why so many people report their dogs becoming more intuitive, more sensitive, and more aware during times of personal change. Because dogs aren't just observing you, they're feeling you. And as the world moves through what many call a planetary awakening, a mass shift in consciousness, dogs are becoming more than companions. They're becoming guides. The age of digital hyperconnectivity, the rise of global crises, the explosion of interest in spirituality and energy healing, all of it is synchronizing with an explosion of canine awareness. As human consciousness rises, dogs are rising with us. They are mirrors, amplifiers, protectors, and most surprisingly, teachers. So if you've ever had the sense that your dog knows more than they should, that they chose you for a reason, that they're trying to show you something, guide you through something, or wake you up to something, you're not wrong. You're part of the awakening. We've seen how dogs are evolving before our very eyes, emotionally, energetically, and spiritually. But here's the real question. Why is this all happening now? Why are dogs suddenly waking up to these extraordinary abilities? Why are thousands, maybe millions, of pets across the globe displaying telepathy, energy healing, and spiritual guidance, all at the same time? The answer may lie in what Edgar Cayce described as the new vibrational frequency of Earth. Back in the 1940s, Cayce predicted that the planet would undergo a massive energetic shift in the early 21st century. He called it a planetary awakening. According to him, this period would trigger dormant abilities in both humans and animals, helping them survive and thrive during what he described as times of intense global transformation. Let's break that down. He said the shift would come with massive challenges: pandemics, environmental crises, mental health epidemics, rapid technological acceleration. Sound familiar? But he also said it would trigger something beautiful, an evolution of consciousness. A leap, not just in how we think, but in how we feel, how we connect, how we understand the world around us. And this is where the dogs come in. When humanity faces its greatest challenges, Cayce said in 1943, the four-legged guardians will awaken to guide and protect during the passage into the new earth. It's not random. It's not luck. It's by design. We are not evolving alone. According to consciousness researchers like Dr. David Hawkins, human beings have been climbing what he calls the scale of consciousness faster in the past 2 decades than in any time in recorded history. This scale measures emotional and spiritual states, from fear, shame, and grief at the bottom, to courage, love, and enlightenment at the top. And something wild is happening. The global average is rising. Fast. We're witnessing a real-time evolution, Dr. Hawkins wrote. Humanity is undergoing a consciousness upgrade that would normally take centuries, compressed into just a few decades. And dogs, they're evolving with us. In fact, many scientists now believe that dogs may actually be responding to our energetic growth, developing skills that match the level of our awakening. Take the events of 2001. The world experienced one of the biggest collective shocks in modern history. And right around that time, veterinarians and animal researchers began documenting strange new behaviors in dogs: emotional hypersensitivity, illness detection, predictive alerts. It was like something had flipped a switch. Now fast forward to 2020. As the pandemic gripped the planet, reports of extraordinary dog behavior exploded. Dogs who had never shown a hint of special sensitivity began sensing when their owners were sick, even when no symptoms had appeared. Others became emotional anchors, staying glued to family members struggling with anxiety or depression. Some began howling or crying hours before news of a loved one's death. Dr. Sandra Molina, a behavioral veterinarian from Madrid, said it best. In 20 years of practice, I've never seen anything like this. The last 2 years have brought more reports of psychic canine behavior than the previous 2 decades combined. Now remember what Cayce said. The prophecy would activate when humanity began to awaken. And one of the major triggers he predicted would be massive global disruption. So here we are. But the phenomenon isn't limited to traumatic events. Believe it or not, dogs are also reacting to moments of global unity. During collective meditations, peace campaigns, or spiritual gatherings, dogs around the world have been observed entering deep states of calm, lying down, breathing slowly, and remaining motionless for hours. No barking, no fidgeting, just presence. At the Buddhist center in Brasilia, resident monks reported that their dogs entered trance-like peace during global meditation events, mirroring the exact times people around the world were focusing their energy on love, unity, or healing. They become living barometers of collective energy, said Lama Tenzin. When the world elevates, so do they. Quantum scientists are starting to explain this through the lens of morphogenetic fields, a theory that says all living beings are connected through a shared energy network. As the frequency of human consciousness rises, that field gets stronger, clearer, and more accessible. And who's the first to tune in? Dogs. They've always been sensitive to subtle energy fields, but now those fields are shifting. We're entering what many spiritual traditions call the era of transition, a planetary cycle where consciousness undergoes rapid change, and beings who are attuned to subtle realms take on new roles. And dogs? They're stepping forward as guides, as helpers, and as protectors of that transition. Maria Helena Ramalho, an astrologer and researcher of cosmic cycles, said something that captures the moment perfectly. Dogs are the first to catch the new frequencies arriving on Earth. They are showing us what the next phase of consciousness will look like, more telepathic, more empathetic, more energetically connected. Now think about your own dog for a moment. Have they started behaving differently in the last few years? Do they show up exactly when you need emotional support? Do they stare at certain people with a look that feels knowing? Have they grown more attached, more protective, more aware of your moods? This isn't coincidence. This is evolution in real time. You may be witnessing the emergence of a new kind of relationship between species, where communication is subtle, spiritual, and deeply healing. A relationship where your dog is no longer just a pet, but a partner in your personal growth, your emotional healing, and your spiritual awakening. This is why, now more than ever, people are saying things like, "I don't know what I would have done without my dog. I swear she understands me better than anyone. He came into my life exactly when I needed him most." And they're right, because whether you realize it or not, your dog may have chosen to be with you, right now, during this precise moment in history, for a reason. If you've made it this far, you already know we're not just talking about pets anymore. We're talking about partners in consciousness. Companions who've come into our lives with a specific mission, not just to walk beside us, but to lift us, teach us, and protect us during one of the most transformative periods in human history. But how do we recognize which dogs are part of this awakening? How do we tell the difference between ordinary behaviors and something deeper? The answer is simpler than you might expect. According to Dr. Patricia Goodman, an expert in animal communication, dogs with awakened abilities tend to display a few key patterns. They appear at critical turning points in your life. These dogs don't just show up. They arrive when something in your world is breaking open. After a loss. During a health scare. At the start of a spiritual journey. Their timing feels fated. They respond to your emotions more than your commands. You might say sit and get no reaction, but the moment you start crying, they're by your side. They don't obey like robots. They feel like guardians. They react to energy instead of logic. They might bark at someone you trust or refuse to enter a room for no apparent reason, only for you to later discover something wasn't right. These aren't behavioral quirks. They're signs of energetic awareness. They recognize your intentions. You think about going for a walk, and they're at the door. You mentally call their name from another room, and they appear. It's subtle, but unmistakable. These are the dogs who are conscious collaborators. And as the world evolves, their role is becoming more important than ever. In fact, entirely new professions are emerging to support this shift. We're seeing the rise of animal communicators who help humans tune into their pets' spiritual messages. Canine energy healers who work alongside dogs to facilitate trauma release. Telepathic trainers who teach humans how to communicate through intention instead of words. Human-dog partnership therapists who guide people in co-evolving with their dogs for mutual healing. It's no longer just about training your dog to sit, stay, and roll over. It's about learning how to listen, how to create stillness, how to receive. And technology is catching up too. New apps and devices are being designed to monitor energetic synchronization between humans and their dogs. Tools that measure biofields, platforms that match people with spiritually sensitive dogs, even wearables that track shared heart rhythms during meditation. The age of intuitive vibrational connection isn't coming, it's here. And perhaps the most important part, you don't need special equipment to start. You just need to observe. Dr. Goodman developed a simple protocol for identifying dogs with awakened abilities: silent calling. Sit in another room. Picture your dog in your mind. Mentally call them. See if they come. Emotion, mirror. Try hiding your emotional state, then watch how your dog reacts. If they pick up on what you're really feeling, take note. Energetic check-ins. Watch for when they start pacing, whining, or lying on certain areas of your body or home. These are often energy signals. You may be surprised by how many of these signs your dog already shows. And if they do, it's time to nurture the connection. Set aside 10 to 15 minutes each day for silent presence. No commands, no treats. Just sit with your dog, breathe, make gentle eye contact, and mentally send gratitude and love. Many people report that this simple practice unlocks a deeper, more telepathic bond with their pets. Remember, dogs don't speak with words. They speak through energy, through stillness, through resonance. And in that space, something magical happens. People start saying things like, "I feel like I'm meditating, but with my dog." It's like we're communicating without talking. I don't know how, but I know she understands. These aren't just heartwarming moments. They're glimpses into a new kind of human-animal relationship. One based on vibration, awareness, and mutual transformation. And it's not just happening in homes. Spiritual centers, healing retreats, and holistic clinics around the world are now working with resident dogs, animals who seem to instinctively support deep emotional work. They often lie next to people in grief, sit near those releasing trauma, or quietly enter the room right as a major energetic breakthrough is about to happen. At a meditation center in Bali, one such dog, named Tara, began sitting at the feet of every person who experienced a spiritual awakening. No one trained her. She just knew. She finds the person who's ready to shift, said the center's director. And when she does, it's like the whole room knows it too. These aren't isolated cases. They're part of a pattern, a movement, a global wave of animals who are no longer here just to be fed and walked. They're here to lead. And more than that, they're here to co-evolve. See, this awakening isn't a one-way street. As dogs develop these spiritual gifts, they're also calling us to rise with them. They're reflecting the parts of us that are still asleep, still numb, still afraid to feel deeply or live consciously. They're showing us what's possible when we return to presence, to trust, to love without condition. That's what this whole awakening is about. It's not just about dogs becoming more psychic. It's about humans becoming more intuitive too, more open, more compassionate, more aligned. And it starts with the relationships closest to us. So the next time your dog does something that feels uncanny, pause. Don't brush it off. Don't label it a funny moment. Ask yourself, what are they showing me? Because chances are they're showing you something about yourself. And if you're willing to listen, not just with your ears but with your energy, you might discover that you and your dog are not just bonded by love, you're bonded by purpose. Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about how these awakened dogs actually find their way into our lives. Because here's something most people don't realize. These dogs, these spiritual allies, healers and protectors, they often choose us. We think we're picking them, filling out an adoption form, walking into a shelter, meeting a litter. But in truth, many of these dogs have been guided, drawn, to the exact humans they were meant to help. And it happens through what we often call synchronicity. You've heard the stories before. I wasn't even looking for a dog, and then I saw her picture and something just clicked. He showed up at my doorstep. I opened the door, and he walked right in, like he already knew he belonged here. I visited 5 shelters, and none of the dogs responded, until this one walked up and put his head in my lap like he'd been waiting for me. These aren't just cute coincidences, they're part of the mission. Many awakened dogs arrive during a moment of crisis or change. A divorce, a death, a move, a spiritual awakening. They come in to assist, support, and help their human through a transitional phase, and often their arrival is timed with eerie precision. Animal communicator Lily Morgan refers to this as the incarnation pact, the idea that certain dogs and humans have soul contracts to meet in this lifetime, during specific windows of transformation. You don't just get a dog, she says. You reunite with a partner who agreed to walk with you through something sacred. And once that people often report immediate emotional healing, a sense of grounded peace, or a reawakening of purpose, simply from the presence of their new companion. It's as if the dog activates something dormant inside them. Let's take the story of Karina, a woman from São Paulo. Karina had just lost her mother and was in a deep, numb grief. One day, while running errands, she passed a small alleyway and saw a stray dog curled up in the shadows. Something about his eyes stopped her. It wasn't pity, she said. It was recognition. She took him home, named him Faro, and within a week began having vivid dreams where her mother appeared, always with Faro at her side. Those dreams became conversations, healing, closure. It was like Faro had come to help carry the grief, Karina said. He didn't take it away, he helped me move through it. Stories like that are everywhere. Dogs arriving as messengers, as soul comforters, as catalysts for healing, and often these dogs demonstrate powerful behavior immediately, before any training, before any bond is formed. It's as if they remember something we don't. So what does this mean for people who don't yet have a dog, but feel a strange calling, a pull toward that kind of connection? It means you might be getting ready for a canine soul reunion. Watch for synchronicities, dreams, repeating signs, a specific dog's name appearing in multiple places, an accidental encounter at a park or adoption center. If it feels fated, it probably is. Because in this new era, dogs with spiritual missions aren't just showing up. they're being assigned, and when it's time, they'll find their way to the person they're meant to help. And here's something else. These special dogs don't always come in perfect packages. Many of them have scars, trauma, wounds. They may have been abandoned, neglected, or abused. But instead of being broken, they are forged. That pain often becomes the very thing that sharpens their intuition, strengthens their healing abilities, and deepens their empathy. That's why Cayce said that rescued and adopted dogs often have the strongest spiritual missions, because their journey of being saved creates a deeper resonance with the human they're meant to support. They carry wisdom, they carry memory, and they carry love in its purest form. So don't ignore the ones with cloudy eyes, crooked tails, or old souls. They may be the masters in disguise. Let's talk about what happens after that connection is made. Because once a spiritually awakened dog finds their human, the journey truly begins. And it's not one-sided. They help you heal, but they're also here for growth. They chose a human who would challenge them, love them, listen to them, and evolve with them. They chose a partner, not a passive companion. And when that partnership is honored, something remarkable unfolds. People begin to shift. They become more aware of subtle energy. They grow more empathetic, more grounded, more spiritually tuned in. They start meditating more, healing faster, feeling supported in ways they never expected. They begin to trust their own intuition, because their dog is showing them how to listen to something deeper than logic. Your dog becomes a mirror, reflecting what you need to face, release, and embrace. And sometimes, that includes deep emotional patterns. Dogs often absorb energy their humans can't process. They'll take in anxiety, sadness, fear, and transmute it. But that's not always sustainable. That's why it's crucial to care for your dog's energy as much as they care for yours. Make space for rest. Create rituals of grounding. Go outside together. Sit in silence. Let them shake off the energy after intense emotional moments. Because that shake isn't just physical, it's a release. And above all, speak to them. Not just with words, but with presence. Because once you recognize that your dog is a conscious being with a mission, everything changes. Suddenly, you're not just living with a pet. You're living with a guide, a protector, a teacher, a soul who crossed time and space to walk beside you through one of the most sacred chapters of your life. So ask yourself, is it possible that your dog chose you? Is it possible that you're not alone on this journey of awakening? Because if you open your eyes and your heart, you might just realize that the master you've been waiting for has been curled up at your feet this whole time. So far, we've explored the mystical, emotional, and spiritual sides of the canine awakening. But let's zoom out and look at the science. Because here's the thing, even though Edgar Cayce's prophecies sound otherworldly, modern research is starting to validate many of the phenomena he predicted. From neurology to quantum physics, science is now catching up to what dog lovers have intuitively known for decades. Dogs are wired for extraordinary perception, and they're evolving right alongside us. Let's begin with the HeartMath Institute, a pioneering research center focused on the electromagnetic fields produced by the heart. They discovered something incredible. The human heart generates a measurable electromagnetic field that can extend up to 3 feet outside the body. When we're calm, loving, or grateful, that field becomes coherent, harmonious. When we're anxious or angry, it becomes chaotic. Guess what? Dogs are especially sensitive to that field. In fact, HeartMath studies found that a dog's heart rhythm can sync with its human's field within minutes, especially during quiet moments of connection. This means your dog is constantly reading your energetic state, not just your tone or body language, but your frequency. This explains why dogs often get anxious when you're anxious, even if you're hiding it. Why they sit beside you when you're silently grieving. Why they celebrate with you before you smile. They're not reacting to behavior, they're responding to energy. And this ability to read energy doesn't stop at the individual level. It scales up to the planetary level. The Global Coherence Monitoring System, an international project that tracks Earth's magnetic fields, has shown that massive emotional events, both tragic and uplifting, create planet-wide energetic spikes. Examples? 9/11, natural disasters, global meditations, the pandemic outbreak. During these events, not only does the Earth's magnetic field shift, but animals all over the world react, including dogs. Veterinarians reported massive increases in restless behavior, emotional clinginess, and unusual alertness in dogs before and during major global incidents. Some animals even began acting out in the days leading up to these events, long before the news broke. Coincidence? Or part of what Cayce described as dogs awakening in alignment with Earth's vibration? Now let's turn to quantum physics, because it might be the key to explaining how dogs are able to know, feel, and act without traditional sensory input. One of the central theories of quantum mechanics is non-locality, the idea that two particles, or consciousnesses, that are energetically entangled can affect each other instantaneously, even when separated by great distances. If you and your dog are bonded deeply and emotionally connected, you may be quantumly entangled. That might sound wild, but consider the stories we've already seen. A dog reacting at the exact moment a soldier is injured overseas. A dog pacing at home when its owner is experiencing a panic attack miles away. A dog refusing to eat or sleep until their owner, who hasn't returned a call, walks in the door with news of trauma or crisis. These aren't just emotional connections. They're vibrational transmissions. They bypass logic and time. They're part of the morphic field, a network of energetic intelligence that links all life, proposed by scientists like Dr. Rupert Sheldrake. Sheldrake's idea is simple but profound. All living beings tap into shared fields of information. When behavior or awareness changes in one part of the species, it ripples through the entire field. So as humans elevate our consciousness, as more of us meditate, heal trauma, pursue spiritual growth, dogs evolve too, not because we train them, but because they're tuned into our energetic frequency. And here's the beautiful twist: they help us evolve faster. Dogs aren't just affected by our awakening, they amplify it. They ground us when we dissociate, they soothe us when we spiral. They mirror our energy so we can finally see what needs to shift. They don't teach with lectures, they teach with presence. And now, research is even backing this up. In a study published by the American Psychological Association, people who interacted with therapy dogs during times of emotional distress experienced significant drops in cortisol, the stress hormone, and increased oxytocin, the bonding hormone, even compared to people who meditated or journaled. But the most fascinating detail: these emotional shifts happened within seconds of eye contact. It didn't require words. It didn't require petting. Just the connection. That's why many people describe their dog's gaze as soulful, comforting, or deep. It's not just emotional, it's biochemical. Something real is happening between your energy field and theirs. And the more we study this, the clearer it becomes. Dogs are neurologically, emotionally, and energetically designed to be our co-pilots during this massive human evolution. They're here to remind us how to feel instead of overthink, be present instead of anxious, love without conditions or fear. In doing so, They don't just help us survive this planetary shift, they help us thrive through it. Now, combine this with technology. The same technology Cayce predicted would connect all minds, and the synchronicity becomes undeniable. Social media is flooded with viral videos of dogs doing the impossible, alerting families to fires seconds before they start, comforting children with autism who haven't spoken in days until the dog arrives, standing guard over family members on the verge of breakdowns, refusing to move until they're calm. These stories, once considered anecdotal, are now part of a global wave. And more importantly, they're not going away. We're seeing the beginning of something massive, not a trend, not a fluke, but the fulfillment of a prophecy that said the four-legged guardians will awaken and they will help humanity rise to its next level of evolution. And guess what? It's happening. Right now, we've come a long way in this journey, from the mysterious prophecies of Edgar Cayce to modern neuroscience, quantum biology, and heart-based science. But as we reach the final chapter, the message becomes beautifully simple. You are not awakening alone. Right now, in your home, at your feet, curled up beside you or waiting at the door, there may be a being who is more than a pet, more than a friend, more than a protector. There may be a spiritual collaborator, a soul who chose to walk beside you, not just through the happy moments, but through the healing, the breakdowns, the breakthroughs, the awakening of who you truly are. So the question is, what happens when we recognize those abilities and honor them? Because the relationship changes. Suddenly, your dog is no longer someone you own. They're someone you partner with. Suddenly, a walk through the park isn't just exercise. It's a shared energetic ritual. Suddenly, when your dog sits near you during grief, you understand they're doing work. They're helping to transmute. They're absorbing. They're holding space in a way that few humans ever could. And that's the next step in this evolution, co-creation. We're moving into a time when humans and dogs will form partnerships rooted in intention, purpose, and energetic awareness, where meditation won't be something you do alone, it'll be something you do with your dog. Where healing won't happen in silence, it'll happen in sacred stillness shared across species. And the more you begin to see your dog as a conscious being, the more you'll notice the following things. They show up when you're about to make a big decision. They grow restless when you're ignoring your intuition. They physically block you from people or spaces that feel off. They sit quietly beside you when you finally surrender to grief. They guide you to nature when you've spent too long in chaos. They become more than animals. They become oracles. And here's the most beautiful part. They ask for nothing in return. No medals, no words, no grand gestures, just presence, just recognition. Just the sacred, silent bond that says, I see you, I feel you. We're in this together. Because in many ways, that's what dogs have been waiting for all along. For us to finally see them, not just as pets, not even just as healers, but as beings of light who chose a form we would accept so they could help us remember who we are. Beings that came here to love us when we had forgotten how to love ourselves. And if that's true, if Cayce was right, if the prophecies are real, if the science is just starting to understand what dogs have always known, then this isn't just the evolution of dogs, it's the evolution of us. Because when you learn to connect energetically with your dog, you learn to connect energetically with everything, with other humans, with the earth, with your own intuition. Your dog becomes the bridge that reconnects you to the sacred. And maybe that's why they're here at this exact moment in history. Maybe they're here to lead us back to something ancient and eternal. Because when we finally see dogs for who they really are, we begin to see ourselves for who we really are: infinite, connected, loving, aware, and that changes everything. So the next time your dog does something that leaves you speechless, the next time they seem to know what you're thinking, the next time they stay by your side when no one else does, remember this: you're not imagining things. You're not being sentimental. You're not being irrational. You're waking up. And your dog? They're already awake. They've been waiting for you to meet them there. So take a breath, sit in silence, make eye contact, feel the energy shift, because the prophecy isn't coming, it's here. And if you're paying attention, you'll realize it's already unfolding, right in your own home, right in your own heart. The canine awakening has begun, and your guide is wagging their tail. Thank you for being part of this journey. If this resonated with you, consider sharing your own experience in the comments. Has your dog ever done something that made you feel they were more than a pet, something you couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore? We'd love to hear your story, because every story is a signal, and every signal brings us closer to remembering we were never alone. We were always walking beside something sacred.